What's up, guys? All right, welcome back. Today we are going to be going over Seneca's letter to Lucilius, letter 13. This one is on groundless fears. This is one of my personal favorites. So let's go ahead and jump into this. All right. He says here in verse 1, I know that you have plenty of spirit, for even before you began to equip yourself with maxims which were wholesome and potent to overcome obstacles, you were taking pride in your contest with fortune. And this is all the more true now that you have grappled with fortune and tested your powers. For our powers can never inspire us in implicit faith in ourselves except when many difficulties have confronted us on this side and on that, and have occasionally even come close to quarters with us. It is only in this way that the true spirit can be tested, the spirit that will never consent to come under the jurisdiction of things external to ourselves. Okay, so there's actually a lot that he's saying in here, and I'm just going to kind of break this down for you. So what he's saying here is, again, remember, he's writing all these letters to Lucilius, okay? And so he's saying that, I know you have plenty of spirit even before you begin to equip yourself with the maxims which are wholesome and potent to overcome obstacles. So he's saying even before you start to learn philosophy, okay, the maxims, okay, which were wholesome and potent to overcome obstacles, right? You were taking pride in your contest with fortune. So even before you started learning these things, you were already winning in life, okay? And it's more true now that you've actually gotten the chance to grapple with fortune and you've been able to test yourself, okay? And he's saying that essentially you can't really know something. Like he says here, our powers can never inspire us implicit faith in ourselves except when many difficulties are confronted on this side and that, and when it's come close to us losing the battle, right? So we have to be tested in order to understand our powers or to see what we're actually made of. Then he said, it's only in this way that a true spirit can be tested. Okay, and he's saying that talking about philosophy here in Stoic philosophy, and saying that the spirit that will never consent to come under the jurisdiction of external things to ourselves, and so. That's the idea of philosophy, of Stoic philosophy, is that we don't want to come under the jurisdiction of things external to ourselves. We want to avoid having things outside ourselves be dominating our inner self, right? That's why we want to learn emotional control and emotional mastery more accurately in Stoic philosophy. So that's what he's saying here, is that this is very important, and this is how you figure out what you're made of, is you're tested. You have to be tested in life, otherwise it doesn't matter, right? Let's go on to verse 2. He says, this is the touchstone of such a spirit. No prize fighter can go with high spirits into the strife if he has never been beaten black and blue. The only contestant who can confidently enter the lists is the man who has seen his own blood, who has felt his teeth rattle beneath his opponent's fist, who has been tripped and felt the full force of his adversary's charge, who has been downed in body but not in spirit. One who, as often he falls, rises again with greater defiance than ever. Okay. So this is a really, really good picture here, right, of what we've been talking about, is this idea that you have to be tested, right? You have to be tested in battle. The touchstone of such spirit. This is the touchstone of such spirit, right? No prize fighter can go with high spirits into strife if he's never been beaten black and blue. So you have to have gone through these things in order to come out. And then what he's saying at the very end of this is that one who, as often as he falls, rises again with greater defiance than ever. That is really the spirit that he's looking for. Okay, so let's go on to verse 3, and he says, so then, to keep up my figure, fortune has often in the past got the upper hand of you, and yet you have not surrendered, but have leaped up and stood your ground still more eagerly. For manliness gains much strength by being challenged. Nevertheless, if you approve, allow me to offer some additional safeguards by which you may fortify yourself. So, this is a key verse here. So, he's sort of breaking down this whole thing, and he's saying, look, here's the deal. So, fortune has often in the past got the upper hand of you, right? So, and yet you have not surrendered, okay? And that's the key, but leaped up and stood your ground more eagerly. So what he's saying there is that it's as a Stoic, as just a person on this planet, you are going to get smacked around by fortune, and most people do get smacked around by fortune, but then they just accept their fate, right? They just say, "Oh, well, this is the way that things are." When he's talking about getting up and fighting, he's talking about that inner spirit. He's talking about the idea that you're not going to let the external circumstances bring you down, right? So a lot of bad things might happen in your life, and they will happen from time to time. But the question is, how will you interpret those things? The question is, will you be defeated by those things? Will you allow the external to rule over your internal and to make you sad or disappointed, or to make you start to develop the victim mindset? So he's going to give some ways to additional safeguards here in the next few verses. And he also says here that manliness gains much strength from being challenged. So I think that's also a good saying. That's also a good thing to understand, is that if you want to become more masculine and you want to develop your manliness, you need to be challenged. That is required. In verse 4, he says, "There are more things, Lucilius, likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And that's a famous quote from Seneca, is we suffer more often in imagination than reality. It's so accurate. He's saying that you worry. You suffer more in your mind, worrying about the things, than what they would actually be. I'm not speaking with you in the Stoic strain, but in my milder style. For it is our Stoic fashion to speak of all things which provoke cries and groans as unimportant and beneath notice. But you and I must drop such great-sounding words, although heaven knows they are true enough. What I advise you to do is not to be unhappy before the crisis comes, since it may be that the dangers before which you have paled, since it may be that the dangers before which you paled as if they were threatening you, will never come upon you. They certainly have not yet come. So a couple things that he's saying here, okay? The first one is he's saying, look, I'm not even speaking to you in the normal Stoic stuff, right? Normally we're like, okay, hey, here's the thing about life is like, yeah, all this stuff, which makes other people upset, that provokes cries and groans, and we consider it unimportant, beneath notice, and that's true. And he's saying, look, that is true. It is, as a Stoic, all this stuff that people complain about, you really shouldn't count to be that bad. It's not a big deal. Like, as a Stoic, we ignore that stuff. We can endure that kind of stuff. It's not a big deal. However, what he's saying here is he's saying, look, here's the thing that really actually is a big deal. All right, is worrying about stuff before it happens. All right, and he says that the things that are to come that you're worrying about, first of all, they might not come, and second of all, they haven't come here yet. So why are you spending the time worrying and causing yourself pain and sorrow when it hasn't even arrived yet? So in verse 5, he says, "Accordingly, some things torment us more than they ought. Some torment us before they ought, and some torment us when they ought not torment us at all. We are in the habit of exaggerating or imagining or anticipating sorrow." Okay, so really important here, right? Some things torment us when they ought. Okay, so that's some things torment us more than they ought. Okay, so sometimes we allow the stuff that is happening to just, how many times have you done this where you allow something that's happening to you to torment you a lot more than really it should? Okay, yeah, and then he says that some torment us before they ought. Okay, and some torment us when they ought not torment us at all, right? So we are in the habit of basically looking at things in the negative light, like, oh, we're worried about things, where we over exaggerate the things that are happening to us, and some things we shouldn't even worry at all. Like, why is this even tormenting you at all? It's not even a big deal at all, right? This is the truth of life. The first of these three faults can be postponed by the present. Okay, so what is the first of these three faults? He's saying that the things that torment us more than they ought. Okay, because the subject is under discussion and in the case is still in court, so to speak. So we have the ability of the things that are actually happening that torment us more than they should. We have the ability to think about these things in the present, okay? Because right now we're experiencing the thing, and so he's saying the case is still in court, so you can still decide how you're going to interpret that situation and decide whether you're going to even let this thing torment you at all, okay? That which I should call trifling, you will maintain to be most serious, for of course I know that some men laugh while being flogged, and that others wince at a box on the ear. We shall consider later whether these evils derive their power from their own strength or from our own weakness. So he's saying here that, the thing is that I get it. All right. Some people are going to say that something that it wouldn't faze me is going to be the worst thing in the world, and other people, are going to be resilient to that type of thing. So the amount that something torments you is going to be subjective to you. And then he's going to talk about this later, though. Is it because these things themselves are bad, or is it that it's our weakness that is causing us this pain? In verse 6, he says, "Do me the favor, when men surround you and try to talk you into believing that you are unhappy, to consider not what you hear, but what you yourself feel, and to take counsel with your feelings and question yourself independently, because you know your own affairs better than anyone else. Ask, is there any reason why these persons should condole me? Why should they be worried or even fear some infection from me, as if troubles could be transmitted? Is there any evil involved, or is it matter merely of ill report rather than of evil? Put the question voluntarily to yourself. Am I tormented without sufficient reason? Am I morose? And do I convert what is not evil into what is evil?" Okay, so let's break this down. Okay, so what is he saying here? Okay, he's saying, when men surround you and try to talk you into believing that you're unhappy, to consider what you hear, but what you do not consider what you hear, but what you yourself feel, and to take counsel with your own feelings and question yourself independently. So he's saying, look, when people talk to you and they try to tell you that your situation is bad, or that you're unhappy, or that you should be troubled, think about this for a minute. Don't just take what they say. Don't just listen to what people are saying about you. Because this happens, right? People will tell you, "Oh yeah, that sucks," or they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, that's hopeless," or "That's worthless," or they will make your situation seem worse than it is. But he's saying, look, think about this, okay? Is there any reason why these persons should condole me? Why should they be worried, even fear some infection from me, as if troubles could be transmitted? Like, what are they trying to do here? Okay, is there any evil involved, or does it matter just ill report rather than evil? Did someone just say the wrong thing, or there's actually something going on here? And he says, "Am I tormented without sufficient reason? Am I morose? Do I convert what is not evil into what is evil?" Right? So am I misinterpreting the situation in the first place? And most of the time, we do this. We tend to take things that are not evil, and we attach some amount of evil to them, as if it's bad, as if someone purposely did something to us, or or fate is just grinding us into a pulp for no reason at all. In verse 7, he says, "You may retort with the question, how am I to know whether my sufferings are real or imaginary? Here is the rule for such matters. We are tormented either by things present, or by things to come, or by both. As to things present, the decision is easy. Suppose that your person enjoys freedom and health, and that you do not suffer from any external injury. As to what may happen to it in the future, we shall see later on. Today, there is nothing wrong with it." Okay, so he's giving some formulas here. All right, so so how do I know whether or not my sufferings are real or imaginary? Okay, well, here's the rule. He's saying, okay, if it's something that's in the present, because it's either something in the present, things to come, or both of those things, okay? So the things in the present he's going to deal with, and he says it's really easy, okay? Here's the deal, okay? If you enjoy freedom and health, and you don't suffer from external injury, okay, and we don't need to worry about what's going to happen in the future. Today, there's nothing wrong, so you're good, okay? So if that's the thing that you're thinking that there is an injury. Well, are you free? Do you have your health? Okay, if you've got that, then don't worry about it. Stop making a big deal of it. Stop whining. In verse 8, he says, "But you say something will happen to it. First of all, consider whether your proofs of future trouble are sure. For it is more often the case that we are troubled by our apprehensions than that, and that we are mocked by the mocker rumor, which is wont to settle wars, but much more often settles individuals. Yes, my dear Lucilius, we agree too quickly with what people say. We do not put to the test those things which cause our fear. We do not examine into them. We blench and retreat just like soldiers who are forced to abandon their camp because of a dust cloud raised by stampeding cattle, or are thrown into panic by the spreading of some unauthenticated rumor." All right, so again, there's a lot here to unpack here, but it's not too complicated. All right, just in this whole letter, he says, and it's kind of confusing, I think, because he's saying that the things that that are troubling you, they're either in the present, in the future, or both of those things. And then he's saying, well, here's how we deal with the present ones. But he's kind of talking about the future, right? He's saying, I guess what he's really trying to say is like, the thing that you think that is trouble in the present, the reason why it feels like trouble in the present is because you're actually kind of worrying about the future. Because he's saying here, but you say something will happen to it, right? Talking about your health and freedom. And then he's saying, okay, look, here's the deal. You're usually more troubled by the apprehensions, right? The rumor that something's going to happen. But is that really the case? Okay, you have to actually examine this. So we agree too quickly with what people say. We don't test those things that cause the fear. We don't examine them. We don't really think about this. Instead, we just run. We just all of a sudden take this panic on because someone has told us this thing. And how many times does this happen in the news, right? You hear all of these scary things that are going to happen in the economy, in the world, and all this stuff. And does it really come to pass? Usually it does not. And yet we fear those things and we listen to those things. All right. In verse 9, he says, "And somehow or other, it is the idle report that disturbs us most. For truth has its own definite boundaries, but that which arises from uncertainty is delivered over to guesswork and the irresponsible license of a frightened mind. That is why no fear is so ruinous and so uncontrollable as panic fear. For other fears are groundless, but this fear is witless." So what he's talking about here is he's saying that, he says, and somehow or other, it is the idle report that disturbs us most. Okay. For truth has its own definite boundaries, but that which arises from uncertainty is delivered over to guesswork and the irresponsible license of a frightened mind. So he's saying that when you don't know what's going to happen, when you have that panic fear, that's the worst kind of fear, right? That comes from an uncertainty, all right, and guessing and thinking about things, worrying, ruminating about things. If you're a worrier, if you're a person who has anxiety, you know what this is. And he's saying that this is this uncontrollable panic fear. That this is the worst fear, because the other fears are groundless. There's no reason to have these fears, but this fear is witless. It makes you lose your sanity. Like, it makes you lose your intelligence. You just do stupid things. In verse 10, he says, "Let us then look carefully into this matter. It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass? And even though it is ordained to be, what does it avail to run out to meet your suffering? You will suffer soon enough when it arrives, so look forward meanwhile to better things." So this is probably one of the most potent pieces of this letter. He says here, look, here's the thing. Okay, some troubles are going to happen. You're going to have some trouble, okay? But it's not a present fact. It's likely that something's going to happen, but it's not a present fact at this point. And then, how often has the unexpected happened, okay? How often has the expected never come to pass, right? Many times you don't expect something and it does happen, and sometimes you expect things and they don't happen, okay? And so, even if it's ordained to be, even if it's something that that is coming down the line for you, okay, then why would you run out to meet the suffering? Why suffer before the time? Okay, there's no need to suffer before the time. You can suffer when the time arrives. And the thing is, when I think about this, I think about mortality. Like, you're going to die. Why suffer about that ahead of the time? But also, you're going to have ill health. You're going to get sick at some point. You're going to have things that are going to happen to you. People in your life that you love are going to die. You don't need to suffer these things before they come to pass, right? They're going to come. You know that they're going to come. Okay, that's fine. Don't suffer them now. Why suffer them twice, right? He's saying, don't just chill out now. You don't need to, don't run out and meet it. And you don't know. You don't know anyway. So you need to just take things as they come. And then, and when you do take things as they come, what you'll find, and he's talked about this before, is that in the present moment, or actually, this is something that I read in The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle's book. He talks about how in the present moment, there is no real pain. Like there is no suffering in the present moment, and there is only present moment. It's only in the future and the past that we suffer, which is very true. And so if you look at things in the present moment, when those things actually come to pass, they won't be as bad in that exact moment as they are in your mind right now. Verse 11, he says, "What shall you gain by doing this? Time. There will be many happenings meanwhile which will serve to postpone or end or pass on to another person the trials which are near or even in your very presence. A fire has opened the way to flight. Men have been let down softly by a catastrophe. Sometimes the sword has been checked even at the victim's throat. Men have survived their own executioners. Even bad fortune is fickle. Perhaps it will come, perhaps not. In the meantime, it is not, so look forward to better things." So he's saying, look, the question is, well, what am I going to look? The pessimist viewpoint is like, well, what am I going to do by doing this? I mean, like, what's the point? What am I saving by doing this? It's going to come. You're telling me not to suffer. You're telling me not to worry about these things. I should worry about the things. Bad stuff happens to people. Okay. He says, look, you're going to gain time. Okay. That's the most valuable thing, right? Remember in the other letters, he said, that's the only thing you have. He said, okay, look, here's the deal. There's a lot of things that happen that that never come to pass. Okay, there's many happenings which will serve to postpone and or pass to another person. Okay, the trials which are really close to you. Okay, fire has opened its way to flight. You may be in a fire, and then all of a sudden an opening opens, and you can break through. Men have been down softly by catastrophe. Sometimes you luck out. A sword has been checked right at the victim's throat. So right when a person's about to die, sometimes they've been spared. And men have survived their own executioners. Bad fortune is fickle as well. Good fortune is fickle, but bad fortune is. So perhaps it'll come to pass. Perhaps it won't. In the meantime, it's not here. So look forward to better things. Put your mind on optimistic things. Look forward to the good things. Don't focus on the bad things, even if it seems like they're inevitable, because you don't even know. Okay. In verse 12, he says, the mind at times, the mind at times fashions for itself false shapes of evil when there are no signs that point to any evil. It twists into the worst construction some word of doubtful meaning, or it fancies some personal grudge to be more serious than it really is, considering not how angry the enemy is, but to what lengths he may go if he is angry. But life is not worth living, and there is no limit to our sorrows if we indulge our fears to the greatest possible extent. In this matter, let prudence help you, and contend with a resolute spirit, even when it is in plain sight. If you cannot do this, counter one weakness with another and temper your fear with hope. There is nothing so certain among these objects of fear that it is not more certain still that things we dread sink into nothing and that things we hope for mock us. Okay, so there's a little bit to break down here. Okay, he says here, okay, the mind at times fashions for itself false shapes of evil when there are no signs that point to any evil. So we, in our mind, even when there's nothing wrong at all, okay, we come up with something wrong. In fact, there are certain people, right, and maybe you're one of them, if you have a lot of anxiety, where when things are going great, you come up with some reason why things are bad, or what is going to happen that's bad, all right? So there's many times where you're just constructing in your mind, okay? He's saying it twists the worst construction, some word of doubtful meaning, or fancies some personal grudge to be more serious than it really is. So it takes a little thing that someone says and it makes it so much bigger. What does this mean? Right? All right. And then he says it's about even considering not how angry the enemy is, but if this person's angry, what lengths would they go to? Like, you're thinking so far ahead. Okay. But he's saying life is not worth living. And there's no limit to your sorrow. So you're going to be, there's no limit to how much you can torture yourself in this way if you indulge your fears to the greatest possible extent. Okay. So let prudence help you. Okay. And here's what it is. Come with a resolute spirit, even when it's in plain sight. So even when the thing that you're worried about is right there, still have hope, okay? And this is what he's saying here is if you can't do this, if you can't just come with a resolute spirit, then counter one weakness with another. Temper your fear with hope. So instead of having fear, okay, which is a weakness, use hope, which is also a weakness, because he does say that hope is a weakness. But he's saying at least use one against the other, okay? Because he says there's nothing so certain among these objects of fear that is not more certain still that things we dread sink into nothing, and that things we hope for mock us. So let's break down this sentence, because this one is a little bit confusing. It is confusing to me as well, okay? There is nothing so certain among these objects of fear. So there's nothing that is so absolutely certain among the things that you're fearing, okay, that it is not more certain still that things we dread sink into nothing, okay? So no matter how certain your fears are about these things, it's more certain still that things we dread, they do sink into nothing, and the things we hope for mock us. So what he's saying about this is it's sort of a weird way to have hope, but he's saying, look, if you can't temper your fear against these things, you can have hope, which is also a weakness. But here's the thing about this weakness, okay? You can know this for sure. It is, however certain you are of your fears, okay, of the things that you're afraid of, the most certain thing, absolutely, is that things we dread do sink into nothing. It does happen. You know this happens, and that things we hope for mock us. So what he's saying is that you can always hope about something because the things that you dread sometimes don't come to pass, and the things that you do hope for actually do mock you, and they don't happen. And so you really don't know what's going to happen. So you can always hope for something opposite of even when it seems like it's really dreary and it's hopeless. In verse 13, he says, accordingly, weigh carefully your hopes as well as your fears. And whenever all the elements are in doubt, decide in your own favor, okay? Believe what you prefer. Wow. This seems opposite to Stoic thought, right? I had the wrong screen. Accordingly, weigh carefully your hopes as well as your fears. And whenever all elements are in doubt, okay? So whenever there's any doubt, decide in your own favor, believe what you prefer. So he's literally telling you, just believe what you want. I know this seems crazy. I think a lot of people get this wrong and they're like, that's too optimistic. No, you don't know what's going to happen. So just believe the thing that is going to be most beneficial to you. I've always talked about this, is that it's better to have beneficial beliefs than true ones. The truth is not as important as what you think it is. It is better to have beneficial beliefs that actually help you in your life, even if they're not true. And we could go into a lot about truth and whatnot, but the reality is that all of life is just, everything you understand is a model. And a model is not an accurate representation of any kind of reality. We do not accurately reflect reality. We just use models. And so what he's really telling you here is that, look, if you don't really know what's going to happen, and you don't really know what's going to happen, you might as well pick the thing that you like the best, to hope for that, to think about that thing, because that's going to give you a better quality of life. Even if you're going to die, even if you're like something bad is going to happen to you, you might as well have the hope so that you don't have to suffer it longer than is necessary. And he says, and if fear wins a majority of the votes, incline in the other direction anyhow, and cease to harass your soul, reflecting continually that most mortals, even when no troubles are actually at hand or are certainly to be expected in the future, become excited and disquieted. Okay, so what is he saying here? If if fear wins a majority of the votes, go the other way anyway. Okay, stop harassing yourself. Stop harassing your soul. Okay, most mortals, even when no troubles are actually at hand, are certainly to be expected in the future, become excited and disquieted. Right? So realize that most people are just torturing themselves for no damn reason at all, even when there's nothing to be torturing yourself about. So stop it. No one calls a halt on himself when he begins to be urged ahead, nor does he regulate his alarm according to the truth. No one says, quote, the author of the story is a fool, and he who has believed it is a fool, as well as he who fabricated it. We let ourselves drift with every breeze. We are frightened at uncertainties, just as if they were certain. We observe no moderation. The slightest thing turns the scales and throws us forthwith into a panic. So he's saying here, look, no one stops. No, in general, right? He's using, exaggerating. He's saying no one, but no one stops themselves. And when someone is urging them ahead and telling them these things, no one says, hey, the author of the story, he's an idiot. And whoever believes this is dumb, and the person who fabricated this is dumb, right? He doesn't. He says we never do that. Instead, what we do is we just let this panic spread. Right now, this is extremely relevant to today. Okay, there's something that happened recently. Maybe it was a pandemic, and there were a lot of stories that were made up about this in order to scare people. Okay, now whatever you believe about this or not, the fact is that very few people were like, this story is a fool. The author of this story is a fool. And who, if you believe it, you're a fool. And also whoever fabricated this thing. Instead, we just went into a panic. And yeah, there's some truth in the things. But what I'm saying is that so many people bought into this massive panic. Okay, and they do it every day as they watch the news, and we can be susceptible to this. Instead of just saying, "Look, hey, this is dumb." No, I'm not going to believe this crap just because everyone else is believing this. And even if it is true, even if there is a pandemic, even if there is, a chance of dying, well, screw it. That's life. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to fear it and hide away in my house and be scared all the time just because I could die. Yeah, I could die. People could die. That's fine. Just get out of here. Don't tell me some kind of bullshit. Get out of here. Get out of here. Leave me alone. You deal with your own life. I'm not going to worry about things that haven't happened yet. Okay. Again, I'm not saying that not to use common sense, but this is the point. Okay. This is why Seneca is so relevant to today, is because if you read Seneca, maybe you wouldn't have panicked. In verse 14, he says, "But I am ashamed either to admonish you sternly or to try to beguile you with such mild remedies." So he's like, "Look, hey, all right, I'm a little ashamed here I don't want to beat you up too much and give you such platitude just don't be afraid anymore, just don't be worried, just don't be anxious." Okay, so he gets it. He gets what he's saying here. Let another say, "Perhaps the worst will not happen." You yourself must say, "Well, what if it does happen? Let us see who wins. Perhaps it happens for my best interest. It may be that such a death will shed credit upon my life." Okay, this one, let's go on and then we'll break this down. "Socrates was ennobled by the hemlock draught, wrench from Cato's hand his sword, the vindicator of liberty, and you deprive him of the greatest share of his glory." So here's what he's saying here. He's got a counter argument to all of the stuff, right? He's saying, look, here's the thing. Let's say someone says to you, "Perhaps the worst will not happen." Then maybe you should counter and say, "What if it does happen? Let's see who wins. Perhaps this will be the best. Perhaps my death will be a credit upon my life. Perhaps even that I shouldn't fear." He's using the example of Socrates. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth, and he had to drink a hemlock draught, which was a poison, and poison himself. He was sentenced to that, and Seneca had the opportunity to escape that death. Many people in Athens said, "Seneca, go. You don't have to do this, man. Just go into exile, whatever, get out of here. We'll help you." He had plenty of followers. He's like, "No, look, if the law of Athens has said that I must be decreed to death, then I will willingly accept my fate, and I will do this like a man." And he drank the hemlock draught, and he died. Okay, but we speak about Socrates today. It was to his credit. Cato, okay, Cato killed himself with his sword. All right, I don't remember the exact history in that particular thing. You can look that up. But he was also known for that, and he by doing that he caused a major political change. All right, so that was his glory. So what he's saying here, okay, he's saying even if the worst comes to pass, right, then maybe you should actually start thinking about maybe when bad things happen to you, quote, bad things, it's actually a good thing. Maybe it actually is credit to your soul. Maybe it actually is credit to the character of the person that you are. Remember at the beginning of this letter, he talked about testing yourself and fate testing you. So is it really bad? And this is a question I ask myself, is when bad things happen to me, are they really bad? Or are they things that will help me grow, right? Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way, right? The idea that you should even consider the bad things as potentially good things is what he's talking about here. In verse 15, he says, I am exhorting you far too long, since you need reminding rather than exhortation. So, and this is an important thing when you tell people things, is I'm not going to tell you something that you don't already know. I'm just reminding you, okay? And in truth, that is it. I think we can all tap into this deeper consciousness where we understand these things. The path on which I am leading you is not different from that on which your nature leads you. You were born to such conduct as I describe. Hence, there is all the more reason why you should increase and beautify the good that is in you. And so this is a great way to give people advice and encouragement and to lecture someone, because he realizes he's gone on quite a bit. He's like, look, it's not even that I have to tell you these things because you don't know them. I'm just reminding you of these things, and it's in your nature already. Like you already know that these things are right, and so I'm just encouraging you in this direction. And so why not increase that? Why not do more of what your natural inkling is? Which is to do these things, to resist these fears and these anxieties. In verse 16, he says, "But now to close my letter, I have only to stamp the usual seal upon it. In other words, to come thereto some noble message to be delivered to you." Quote, so he's getting a message from someone else. "The fool, with all his other faults, has this also. He is always getting ready to live. Reflect, my esteemed Lucilius, what this saying means, and you will see how revolting is the fickleness of men who lay down every day new foundations of life and begin to build up fresh hopes even at the brink of the grave." Okay, this is a powerful quote here. The fool with all his faults has this also. He is always getting ready to live. So, okay, this is hard, okay, because so many of us do this, which is that we're like just getting ready to start the thing. Right? We're always have the new idea, the new thing we're going to start tomorrow. We're going to do this thing. Now I'm really going to live my life. Now I'm really going to do the thing. Just live your damn life. Stop doing this. Don't be a fool. Stop trying to just, okay, I'm going to start it now. Just do it now and keep doing it. Don't keep on doing that. And he's saying here that it's so dumb is that men lay down every day new foundations of life, right? To start new things and beginning fresh hopes, even at the brink of the grave. So it's not that you shouldn't do new things or that you can't, that it's too late for you. It's just that stop living your life this way where you're constantly doing a new thing instead of continuing to do the thing and actually getting it done, okay? In verse 17, he says, "Look within your own mind for individual instances. You will think of old men who are preparing themselves at the very hour for a political career or for travel or for business. And what is baser than getting ready to live when you are already old? I should not name the author of this motto, except that it is somewhat unknown to fame and is not one of those popular sayings of Epicurus, which I have allowed myself to praise and to appropriate. Farewell." So he's making the point here, okay? And this is something that is relevant to today, right? What does he say? He says, look, okay, think of old men who are preparing themselves at that very hour for a political career or for travel or for business. And what is baser than getting ready to live when you're already old? So he's not knocking old people doing things, okay? He's saying getting ready for, preparing themselves for a political career or for travel or for business. And so what are you doing? Are you planning on retiring and then you're going to live your life? Are you going to go travel? Are you going to, I don't know, maybe you're going to start your political career, or finally start your business or do your thing, or maybe, hey, you're going to do your YouTube channel, whatever it is. Stop. Do it now. Stop waiting. If you're waiting to live your life until all the ducks line up and fortune, lines up the way that you want, you're going to be waiting a long, long time, and it might not even come. So stop doing that. Instead, he's saying, look, just do it now. Just live your life now. Like, this is a life. You're living it now. You're losing it now, right? We in the first letter, we talked about time. Okay? Do not waste time. All right. So this is a long letter, but this is a good one, and we'll see you tomorrow.